We're fortunate to be able to introduce you to Spooky, who we met through Sketch here in Toronto. Sketch is an initiative that uses creative arts to engage street-involved youth. Spooky is a vibrant, energetic character who's articulate, and we could not have had a better focus person for our demonstration. When we start the process of a MAPS conversation, we end up kind of recording this for you and thinking about the purpose. And you and I had a little bit of a chat about the purpose of this being, well, why don't you describe what the purpose that you had in mind was in thinking about having this conversation?
Okay, well, what I want to get out of this is just a good, clear view of mainly my position here at Sketch and what I can do with the contract that I'm on now, and my future here at Sketch and what I can do beyond the contract that I'm on now. Continue to...
The statement of purpose is an important early step in the orienting process before you've even begun to invite the story. And Spooky speaks to it here in just a few sentences. It actually follows a more extended conversation that I had with Spooky, as a facilitator would have with someone before the meeting starts, about their purpose, so they can speak to it more briefly as the meeting opens and begins.
One of the things you don't see is that I'm in the background and I've already laid out the paper and the side notes. And just to create a zone of comfort and make it a safe place, I've explained that I'm going to be taking notes and what the side notes are, and very, very quickly walk people through the steps, not specifically, but just so they sort of have an idea of what's going to happen, and it's okay, we'll get through this, we'll take care of it.
You also see that I'm sitting with Spooky, pretty much knee to knee or beside him, and at the same level as he is, because my intention is that this is a comfortable conversational process. We've also thought about where Spooky is sitting in relationship to the graphic of the map that will unfold on the wall. So he's sitting at the left side of the graphic, which is where the story will actually be recorded first and begins. So he's close to the history and the story as we start the conversation.
And you'll notice that as we go through this, from time to time, we may well move Spooky, if it's okay with him, but to be close to where the action is on the graphic, so that he's really, really central to the process.
Work with and through and at Sketch, and just continue to be involved forever, because I need this place.
It's really going to be helpful, I think, if we get an introduction of the people who are here. And we talked about the fact that you could introduce them. Given the cast of thousands, you opted for people introducing themselves and their relationship to you. So anywhere you want to invite someone to start, and then we'll work around the room.
Go for it, anybody.
Julian.
I'm Julian. I'm one of the program coordinators here, and I've known Spooky for, gosh, it feels like years now.
Would be over 3.
Over 3 years, wow. And I've just been really privileged to be a witness to his growth and the path that he's been on. We also share an interest in martial arts and in terms of internal energy and just the benefits that can give you. And I'm just really excited to watch all this unfold.
I'm Phyllis, and I am the artistic director here at Sketch. And I guess I heard of Spooky a few years ago, and then got to know him a little bit better, I guess mostly this past year. And he's my replacement, so I'm interested in nurturing that. I feel you embody so much of what Sketch is, and so it's really beautiful to see how you want to take it further in the universe.
It's really helpful to invite people directly to introduce themselves and ask them the question, why is it important to you to be here today for Spooky? And I'm really trying to invite people to let Spooky know that directly rather than me. You heard a couple of great examples of people offering that.
Spooky, of course, did the welcome. He chose who was coming. And so the cast here is a very, very powerful network of his supporters and people who know him and care about him deeply.
One of the things that you'll notice is my nodding, and I am trying to appreciate and acknowledge each person for the contribution as they make their introduction, and thank each person as they've done that. When everyone has finished introducing themselves, that's also an opportunity where Jack and I can each in turn introduce ourselves and our roles in the process. And I explain to people that I will be holding the questions and guiding them through the process and letting them know what each of the points of the conversation are, taking a look, dancing through the template, and then introduce Jack, and he talks about his
And I
role.
pretty much talk about listening with my fingers, trying to get the imagery right, and inviting Spooky to constantly coach me, because my point will be to get it his way, not my way. And it's a great opportunity to check in, does he have color preferences or anything like that? And once again, what we're searching for is creating a level of comfort and trust so that Spooky will be in charge in every possible way.
It's a pleasure and a privilege to have the opportunity to hang with Spooky and to watch him grow, and it's been great.
So we start the conversation from a place of history and reflection about that and your story in terms of thinking about who you are. And I want to ask you just to think about 3 turning points or stories that come to you that you want to tell us about from your life.
I guess like the main big turning point in my life would have been when I just left the small town that I grew up in and came out here and started just living on the streets, and just like I was finally at a point where I felt more free than I had ever been. And I started to realize the infinite number of opportunities that I had that have always been,
I asked Spooky to remember his purpose and take a breath and think about a story from his past that could teach him something about his gifts and who he is, and just to let the story come.
sort of
And I was starting to doodle on the side notes as Spooky told his story. And
typical way of like
And
going
my
through
notes
school,
were more
going
to
through
let
more
him
school, and then
see
going through
me
more school,
listening
and then
with the
after that,
pens
getting a job,
so that
you
we
know,
could
and doing that for
reconstruct
the
it
next
and
year.
then work to images of his choice.
I just never believed that was
After the
the way
contribution of each story,
I
I
came out here and
thanked
confirmed my
Spooky and
beliefs
extended appreciation.
definitely not the
And
way
I think
things
it's
are.
really important
So,
that this is about
and
appreciation, not
that
analysis.
was the same time that I discovered.
And again, the
this
imagery that I
space
had
that
created for
we're
my notes
situated in right
often
now.
had a passing, or sometimes almost no resemblance to
It only
what
confirmed my
what
beliefs even
Spooky
more
generated
so.
as an important image for himself. And
Just
our
infinite
dialogue about what that ought to look like was a lot of fun
do what you want
and very important.
It's possible.
Before closing this step, I've invited Spooky to think about each image in turn that was part of his story and asked him to think about what's one thing that this story has to say to you now, just as a way to remind Spooky and the rest of the planning circle that the stories keep speaking to us, and we're trying to listen in for gifts and messages from each of the stories.
And then even though I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do here, I just saw that there were so many different things that I could be doing, you know?
So the move is really a pivotal turning point for you, and I can
Yeah.
hear Jack making notes on the page behind me, and we want to be able to put some image on the paper in terms of the story about what you really want there from the story you just told. Is there some image that would reflect that event or time for you? What would you like there? Just to be able to look back and say, yeah, when I see that, I know that that's what that particular event and story is about.
I don't know. A bridge. I'd say a bridge.
Okay.
Because I was living under a bridge, but really more so going over a bridge at that point in time. So, yeah.
Okay.
When Spooky said a bridge, I had an image, because I know the Spadina Street Bridge, and I was about to draw him under the bridge when he kept on reflecting and said it was the first time I'd been free, and I suddenly realized that he wasn't going to be under the bridge, he was going to be on the bridge. And he gave me some pretty careful instruction about that. And it was a complete switch of what was going on in my head that ended up being absolutely responsive to what he was thinking.
Point in my life was
It really reminds me about the hard work for the graphic recorder and the process facilitator of just remembering
when I
to
was,
let go
really
of
young. I would just
what my
listen to
image is and make the
whatever
space
was on,
for
like, the
Spooky
pop
to really
radio
contribute
stations, you
a
know,
vivid image that will
just
remind
because
him of the story.
in the town.
So let me see if I got this right, Spooky. The story you told us began in a small town where pretty much it felt like you were a bit confused and not exactly knowing where you were going. And the pattern seemed to be for everybody there: school, more school, and a job, and it was not your thing. And so you escaped when you were 17, and you moved to the city, came to Toronto, where for you it was freedom. And I think that might seem a bit strange to some people, because your freedom actually started living under the Spadina Street Bridge, but for you it was infinite possibility. It suddenly, wow, look what's all out there. And part of that was because you bumped into Sketch. As Spooky concluded his stories, round one anyway, it's a great idea to play them back. And it's partly giving him a chance to just slow down and listen and see if we've got it right yet, because it's a time he can correct the story and help us to be sure we're hearing it correctly. Through Sketch.
It's also an interesting opportunity for me as the process facilitator to be listening in for gifts. You may have noticed that I had paper and pen in my hand. I don't seem to be able to listen without it. And I was noticing things that he said that we might want to come back to in other steps that might be threads of the story, as well as listening for gifts.
And encouraging Spooky to make corrections along the way. So it's his story the way he wants it, whether it's color or shapes or images, whatever, is constantly reinforcing this. This is yours. We want it your way. You are in charge.
Before Spooky started sharing his story, I had reminded the planning circle that they would be in a space of deep listening, that this is a time that Spooky is really sharing his story and the moments he is invited to remember in his way.
But
Is there another milestone or turning point that you would name, or have we got it? Is there one more up to now? Are we there?
I think that's pretty much it. Right there, up to the test, and then that test just like is in our system. It's the first level test is described as passing through a gateway. And
What's the gateway look like? No, is there a Tai Chi gateway image or one for you?
You can make it look like however you want. I don't know. What do you think a gateway looks like?
Okay. No. Do you want
big arch? There.
Okay. Is it stone? Is it floral? Is it plants? Is it?
It would be gold.
Ooh. Ooh. Okay. That'll take care of that.
One of the things that I really try and be mindful to do is to just invite Spooky to let a memory come. Just quiet his mind and let a memory come and not overthink it.
Burgers.
Burgers. So to move from thinking about your story and your history and who you are right now, we invited you actually to move in time travel, I'm sorry to say, without sparks, light, and fanfare, but just move yourself into another place to be closer to the future and think out 2017, 2020, and feeling the force of all the people you've gathered and your own aspirations. The only guidelines for thinking about the future are that it's not restrained, and do not be bound by thinking, oh, that's not realistic, I can't say that. It is unrestrained, and the limits are in your imagination, which it strikes me are quite vivid. So think into the future about what you want for your life.
Okay. Well, for one, in 15 years, I still want to be here in this space. Well, actually, no, I want Sketch to be in a different space in 15 years where we can have dogs.
The process facilitator is really inviting the map maker, in this case Spooky, to really think out loud and explore what matters to him, what his dreams are for his life and for his contribution. And I try and do this through various questions. One of the things that I've noticed is really important is actually giving people a stretch of time to just speak and reflect and discover what they're thinking about, sometimes by just hearing what they have to say and not interrupting the flow of that. Just letting someone go with it, not interrupting with what color is that, what does it look like, but letting them speak.
Holding empty space in front of people so that they have to take a moment and think through and take a pause is a very, very powerful, important strategy in this kind of listening. And if you're doing the graphics, you're taking notes, usually on the side notes at this point, and not interrupting.
To draw some bomb options.
Is that a nuclear kind of?
I've asked from time to time of Spooky, after he has said something and paused, I've asked him, why is that so important to you? To be able to search for deeper meaning and highest purpose, to start to explore that. Meet the Roadrunner.
Having listened to Spooky dream about possibilities, it's a great time to play it back and see if we've got it right yet. In this case, which is a great idea when we can, we've invited Spooky up, so he's actually integrating with the notes and right there feeling them and being part of the action. And then we ask him to think about, so what does that look like? And in this, and looking for a central image, because once again, there'll be lots of little images, and sometimes, and often in fact, people have a new emergent image when they have a few moments to stop and think and say, aha, and you have this breakthrough moment. And Spooky, of course, just seizes the pens, which is a wonderful thing, takes control, and creates the image that he wants.
All right.
It's interesting. Our deepest dreams really do tell us something important about who we are and what we want to bring to the world. So having just held the questions as invitation of Spooky, what's your dream and what do you really want for your life, and just to wait quietly for what comes.
And both of us throughout this are listening faster in terms of, particularly for the gifts, because we know the process. So we'll be scratching notes on paper and on the side notes about things that we know we're going to use later.
We often invite appreciations from the planning circle, who've again been deeply listening, and they have an opportunity to extend appreciations as they've listened to Spooky share his dream.
And that's sketch.
Fabulous. We want to hear what is your fear, your nightmare. What's the shadow side of this for you? Because we want to hear it, honor it, and contain it.
Okay. Can I sit?
You
Yep,
may.
you may.
Please do.
I guess if there's any fear, it's that I won't be able to work through the bureaucracy and that it will defeat my dream.
My role is to actually make a transition from one step to the next and hold the question and state what the purpose of that step really is and ask the question of Spooky. When he was standing, I stood. When he wanted to sit again, I'm sitting as well. And Spooky is now reflecting on his nightmare. Jack is making notes about that. Is there an image that...
And once he's done thinking about it, I want to negotiate an image with him, and I want it small and I want it contained, because nightmares are very powerful on their own, and we want it to, so negotiating what does Spooky want on the paper, how big, and essentially having it fade a bit is really, really important.
Pushing through that, you know?
In our experience, no matter how large someone's nightmare is,
That's what scares me.
we ensure that it is always graphically recorded on the page,
I might not.
smaller than the dream, so that someone's dreams are bigger than their nightmares.
Change that in people, but
What we're going to do is collect from people who love you, your best friends, your fans, gifts and contributions that you would name. And Jack is going to record those, and then we're actually going to work to a central image of that. But let's name them. Gifts and contributions that you see in Spooky, and we're going to write them down. Let's hear
He
them.
can play drums really good.
All right. Great drummer.
He's got a good sense of balance, that guy.
Okay, good sense of balance.
He's like a really determined person. Like nothing can get in his way. He's gonna do it, and he's also very like level-headed and like responsible. And yeah.
Determined, level-headed, responsible. We've actually learned that inviting the people in the planning circle who've been listening to begin by naming the gifts and qualities that they've heard is actually a better place to start than asking Spooky himself to start naming his own gifts. So we've come to invite people in the planning circle to begin by naming the gifts.
And this, at this point, the graphic of it is very, very busy and very fast. So you'll hear Lynda repeating back for me because I'm trying to keep up and be sure I record all of people's comments. And I'm doing that around the edge while leaving a space in this part of the graphic for a central image that will emerge.
I've asked people to think about when he's at his best, what contributions Spooky brings to other people, ways that he makes a positive difference. When you think about his signature ways of being, what are they? We almost had to stop the conversation. There were so many gifts brought forward. It's just really important to think about this as grounding in his gifts. The first three conversations of the story, the dream and its central image and purpose, and the nightmare, are all, if you will, kind of above a horizon line. And this, as we graphically record it, is grounded below the horizon, and this is the place that is the way the focused person really makes a difference in other people's lives.
Draw whatever you want, Sue.
In this case, while I often do the image, Spooky invited one of his colleagues to get up, and she is a spectacular artist. And once again, it's the signal here that Spooky is taking control and giving over the creation of this image to one of his friends. It's a spectacular move.
So he's searched for a way that there's a central image that really stands for his gifts and invites, as Jack said, Sue to do that graphic.
Spooky's friend Sue is an artist, and she drew a repulsing monkey, which of course is a,
Complex Tai Chi pose.
yeah.
It is Spooky actually in this Tai Chi pose. We've been hearing throughout his story and his dream how important Tai Chi are to him, and this became his central image. And Sue drew Spooky in this repulsing monkey pose.
With smart pants.
You'll notice that Jack has just given me a small cue, kind of rolling forward with his hand. There is actually always communication between Jack and I, and he's letting me know at this point that we need to keep the pace up and I need to make the transition to the next step because this is taking a while. So we've got this very powerful picture of who you are and the kinds of gifts and contributions that your people see, that you have to bring to the world. And the last two steps are really about actually what it takes to support that contribution so that you thrive and your contribution is really brought to the world and you're moving towards that dream that you've got, that future explosion of energy and really making a difference in the world with your life and the people that you touch. And then the last step is moving to some action steps. If we take and think about these gifts and talents and contributions, I want to invite you, Spooky, and the group to think about what strikes you as what it's going to take for for your contribution to thrive. What does it take for you to stay strong, to stay on track and headed to your dream?
Use all of this to get there.
Takes
Gifts must be given and received, so we're really searching for what it takes if other people are going to receive Spooky's gifts. We're also asking questions that really invite listening for what will the roles be? Where are the places these gifts that Spooky has, where would they not only be welcome, but where are they needed, and what kind of roles might he play? And so we're asking those questions of Spooky and the people who are sitting with him in the planning circle.
That's all I see, at least, like, that's supporting me.
Is daily meditation and daily for this important to you? That's something that you need. Jack's not only recording a few images to remind Spooky and the planning circle what they've said, but words and phrases that really capture detail here are really helpful so that people can really remember what they've talked about and get clarity about what it will take.
This could easily include skills that you would need to add to your knowledge base in order to move in the direction you need to. It could be practices, like for Spooky, he needs to keep up his Tai Chi and meditation in order to be centered, in order to be strong enough to not slip off his own path. It's whatever it takes, but it's a discussion, a dialogue to how are we going to avoid the nightmare and move in the direction of the dream. What are the things we have to do? What are the things we have to get better at? What are the practices we have to commit to?
One of the things we've been learning is that this is a really important place to be thinking about the contribution in everyday community life to build a stronger community. So thinking about where in the community is this gift welcome and needed? What are expectations that best encourage the contribution of the gift? Is there anything that would make Spooky more confident in contributing his gift in community life? So it's really not only about heading in the direction of the dream that he has, being mindful about the contribution for building a stronger community as well.
And although this particular discussion is fairly general, as facilitators, you're listening very, very fast to try and listen for first steps, because you're going to hear them. They're buried in this discussion. And so you may well be taking notes about things that would be immediate steps that require follow-up. So you need to stay strong enough so that you can keep being relentless. And I guess a flip way would be to say, if one day you come in and you're not being relentless, you would want these people to be who they are and say, come on, Spooky, what's up here? And remind you that, or notice and help you get back on track.
So Jack's moved into recording what it takes for you to stay strong in this into a few key action steps. Think about at least 3 or 4 action steps, thinking about who is going to do what, when.
You really want people to be specific. What are they going to do, when, with whom, who's the coach? No slippage at all.
Let us know what you have. Oftentimes, facilitators may have ideas as they've been listening in about possible action steps. They need to be something that Spooky would agree on. In this case, we offered some ideas and actually made some contributions ourselves about connections that we would make. This step is quick-paced and has really great energy to it. People are making commitments to one another about things they'll do and offer based on hearing what Spooky had to say, and he makes some commitments about action he'll take.
And it's my job. So just even hearing you say that the Stilling guy offers this course that maybe in the future you might be interested in, like we have a bursary, there's money there for people to be doing that. Like I'm not sure how much you know that, and there's even money right now, and it's all like everything in the arts, and I mean like it might even be able to help you cover
Anybody
costs
can make a
for Tai Chi,
suggestion,
and I don't know if you
but
know that. Like,
Spooky gets the veto. It's his plan, so you know, he gets to decide.
Like I hear a lot.
We've also learned it's really important to ask a question about when people want to meet again and reconvene. So there's a time that they are checking in the future. Remember, we've talked about the fact that this needs to be more than just a meeting. And so finding a way that people say, yeah, we're going to meet again, and who they want to have gather, setting a time is really important. We close with a round of words, and I'm wondering if you'd like the last word or the first word. And the word will be just a reaction actually to the experience of this process. Just a closing round of words. Would you like to start or finish?
By saying one word? Confident. I feel more confident in this than I ever have. And
Offering a round of words gives closure. We need to bring this particular meeting to an end. We want Spooky to know what it's been like, not only for him, but for others. And even this brief closing can be a very powerful learning.
It's often a time for affirmation about the process and the experience, and as Spooky spoke to it, just the energy that he feels. And while he spoke a few sentences, most people are really encouraged to then offer just a closing word, maybe two. And that's recorded on the graphic. You'll see in this map there was so much energy and commitment that people absolutely felt compelled to stand up and enroll and sign the graphic as a statement of their commitment to Spooky and their intention to support him in the journey.
It's a great way to bring closure to a meeting, and this is a very special meeting, so it's often a very powerful experience in and of itself. Spooky's map is just one step in the process. It's much more than a meeting. So after this, facilitators get together and review their process. And Spooky is going to be getting together with his people from time to time to review how it's going and what needs to be adapted so that the process continues and life gets better with full life in the community.